Do you feel frustrated with your lack of success in Magick? Do you find that no matter how much you try, you are still not able to manifest the money, love, career change, or big life changes that you envision? It might not be that you're doing Magick wrong. It might be that you have unresolved conflicts in your shadow that are holding you back. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can resolve conflicts in your shadow and start achieving all of your heart's desires. So let's get into it. So to start with, what is the shadow? The shadow is a concept that was created by psychologist Carl Jung. The shadow is part of the unconscious mind. It's part of ourselves that we're not even aware of. In fact, the shadow contains desires and goals which might even contradict the goals and the desires that we consciously have. For example, if you are a very orderly, very self-disciplined person, then you might have aspects of your shadow that are more impulsive or more aggressive. And this would manifest in your daily life either as revulsion or hatred toward people that are impulsive, or it could even manifest as an attraction toward those types of people, which you're not able to explain. And this illustrates something important about the shadow. It strives for completion. It strives to unite with the conscious part of ourselves so that we can become more whole. Now, how does this relate to Thelema? Unification is a very important concept in Thelema. Our conscious selves, our conscious egos, are not self-unified. They are not whole. We achieve a sense of wholeness from our interaction with things outside of ourselves. So, for example, when I perceive something, I create a sense of self as a perceiver in relationship to the object perceived. The same thing goes for something that I am thinking about. To think an object or to think a thought turns me into a thinker. To love another human being or to love a thing turns me into a lover. To desire something, to desire a goal, self-unifies me for at least a moment as an individual or an identity pursuing a goal. But our conscious egos are always dependent in this way upon things outside of themselves for a kind of semblance of unity or a semblance of self-identity. But we have these other parts of ourselves in our unconscious which are also trying to achieve certain goals. And so they actually constitute different identities or different selves within ourselves. From the perspective of our conscious selves, we see ourselves try to achieve something in life. We see ourselves try to go for a promotion or try to find a romantic partner. And then we find that we procrastinate about it, or we don't prepare enough, or we seem to almost purposely say the wrong words. And we call this self-sabotage. In my opinion, there is no such thing as self-sabotage. What's actually happening in those cases is that your conscious ego is going toward one thing, but then your unconscious self or selves are going in different directions. Your conscious self is seeking some kind of comfort, some kind of feeling of happiness, some kind of feeling of success. But these unconscious parts of yourself, they're also doing the same thing. They just have a different idea of what it is that they are pursuing. And so this manifests as our conscious goals not being achieved. But there is actually an unconscious need being met by doing that. Coming to true unity, coming to a higher sense of self, means becoming aware of what these unconscious parts of ourselves are, what their goals are, and synthesizing or uniting ourselves with them to form a higher unity, a higher sense of self. And then once we have achieved that unification within ourselves, to surrender all of that to the divine unity, the true will. The true will is our ultimate unity. It is the idea of who and what we are and the path that we are on when all of our parts are unified and they come together and they go after their common aim or their common goal. This process of uniting all of the parts in ourselves and surrendering it to the divine is an important part of what Crowley referred to as the great work. So before diving into the specifics on how to do this, if you're enjoying this content, there is a really good chance that you would enjoy the free PDF guide that I put together called Unveiling the Mysteries of Thelema. I went through and found the 10 most frequently asked questions about Thelema, and I gave really succinct answers to all of them in my own voice. I wrote a 3-page introduction to this that explains sort of what my whole take on Thelema is and how I came to it. And I'm offering it for free as a download. So if you're interested in that, you can find a link to download it in the description of this video. Now moving on to how to do this. The first thing that you have to do in shadow work is to try to bring the unconscious drives, the unconscious desires and goals into conscious awareness. Now, there are a few ways that you can do this. A really useful one is to engage in a journaling exercise. Let's say that your conscious goal is some kind of really big life change, like a career change. Sit down and just start journaling freeform on that goal and see what comes up. Just, let all of the desires, all the wishes come to the surface. And probably what's going to happen over time as you continue to journal about this is that other sorts of thoughts and feelings are going to start bubbling to the surface. They might be nagging doubts. They might be things to the effect of, oh, but that's not going to work because. And normally we have an emotional reaction to these thoughts coming up, but instead of reacting to it, instead of getting caught up in the content, just continue to write it out. Just see what comes and just let the stream of consciousness go, because eventually as you keep writing, you're going to get a much more diverse and much more textured description of what's really going on in your mind with regard to this particular goal. Second thing you can do, and this goes in a very different direction, is just sit down and try to visualize yourself in a place that makes you happy. What is your happy place right now? What is the sort of place that your mind and your body and your emotions will take you to in imagination as something that is extremely satisfying and extremely peaceful? And then notice all of the qualities of that scene. What's the place that you're in? What is that place like? What is happening around you? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? How do you feel? Include as much description as possible. Now, once you have that long description, compare all of those qualities that you have listed out to the qualities of the goal that you are trying to achieve and the path to that goal, and see how much contradiction there is between those things. Because if you have a center of gravity in yourself that is drawing you towards something which is very tranquil and very peaceful, but your conscious goal is bringing you through something that's going to require a high level of grind and friction and temporary chaos and possibly even conflict, well, then you can see right there where the contradiction is between your natural conscious and unconscious impulses versus this ideal that you're trying to move toward. A third thing you might try to bring up the unconscious content is to do some divination. Throw down 3 tarot cards with the question in mind or with your goal in mind, and tell a story through those 3 tarot cards, beginning, middle, end, or past, present, future, however you want to do it. You will, by starting to create a narrative around it and bootstrapping those parts of your mind, you're going to naturally start to bring up unconscious motives and unconscious desires and include them in that story. So after you do the divination, write out everything that came up in it, and then examine that in the same way that you would examine a journal entry or the fantasy exercise that I described. Once you have a clear sense of what this unconscious content is, enter into dialogue with it. Imagine that it is a person sitting with you in a room. Have an honest conversation with it. Try to be curious about it. How are you feeling? What's going on for you right now? What is it about these particular life plans that is causing you anxiety? What is it that you need? is there anything that would help you feel better about the changes that we're trying to make? And just see what comes up. I like to write this whole thing out in my journal as an actual dialogue by hand. It really makes it into a slow, meditative, emotional process. See if you can come to some kind of agreement with it. So for example, let's say that you want to do this really big career change. Let's say you want to ask for this promotion, but it's going to require you to work much longer hours. And what you're finding out through this dialogue is that there's a part of you that's scared that if you have to work these extra hours, you're not going to be able to devote as much time to, let's say, music, that you really care about music. So what you would do through this dialogue is come up with a way to reassure this other part of yourself, like, hey, even with all of this other stuff happening, Saturday mornings for 2 hours are always going to be just all about music. And if for whatever reason, somewhere down the line, that agreement is broken, right? We can't do Saturday morning music, then that means that something has gone sideways, and we're going to come back and we're going to reevaluate, and we're going to figure out how we can proceed in a way that's more harmonious, right? With this core drive of being able to be creative and being able to create music. You treat it like it's an actual real relationship, because that's what it is. You're building a relationship with a deeper, unknown part of yourself, which manifests like a different person. And what you want to do is you want to recognize the divinity of that selfhood as being on an equal footing with your own conscious divinity. Because it's really only with the two senses of self coming together that it really creates an actual divinity in the first place. So what you're doing through this dialogue is you're signaling to your unconscious, your concerns are real, they are valid, and I treat them as on an equal footing with mine. And then if you want to, you can conclude this imaginary dialogue with some kind of symbolic ritual. It could be something really simple. It doesn't have to be complex, but just sending that signal into your unconscious that I take this seriously. I regard this entire process as sacred. I regard union with myself, with these dark shadow sides of myself, as being a sacred task. And then see what effect that has. There could be multiple reasons why your magic isn't working. You could be applying the wrong force in the wrong way to the wrong thing. You could be lazy. You might be too forceful. One of the most common reasons that Crowley said magic fails is because of ignorance of our true wills. But there is no full, complete understanding of your true will without also going through parts of the unconscious that Jung called the shadow. So what I'm suggesting in this video is that rather than attacking the work or the magic more directly, take a step back and reframe. Look at it from a completely different point of view. Rather than looking at what you're doing or not doing externally, re-examine the internal landscape. The idea behind this is that instead of pursuing that external goal more aggressively, you are in a certain sense raising your own vibration up to the point where the goal that you're going after is within striking distance of you. So what do you think? Does this sound like good advice? Do you have different experiences working with the shadow from what I've described? Do you have better tips? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you enjoy the content of this video, there's a really good chance you're going to enjoy this other video as well. So go check it out. Until next time, love is the law, love under will.